Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our spotlight session on this summer's hottest titles at Image Comics. My name's Chloe Ramos. I'm the book market and library sales manager here, and I'll be your moderator today. Joining me is Tony Fleecs to my left. He's a prolific, critically acclaimed comic book creator. His licensed work has sold hundreds of thousands of copies in the United States and has been translated and reprinted all over the world. Tony's creator-owned work includes In My Lifetime, Jeff Steinberg, Champion of Earth, Time Shopper, and Stray Dogs. You've also seen his art on some of your favorite titles like Star Wars, Avengers, Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, and just a literal ton of My Little Pony. Next up, we have Kyle Higgins. Kyle is a New York Times bestselling writer whose work includes Nightwing, Gates of Gotham, and Batman Beyond 2.0. After spending 2 years at the University of Iowa, Kyle transferred to Chapman University, where he co-wrote and directed a superhero noir titled The League, about the 1960s superhero labor union of Chicago. That film served as the inspiration for his Image Comics series Cowl, and since then, he's created numerous hit titles with us, including Hadrian's Wall, The Dead Hand, and most recently, Radiant Black and Ordinary Gods. Rounding out our trio today, we have Dan Waters. Dan is the author of Coffin Bound, Limbo, and most recently, Homesick Pilots for Image Comics. He's also written for Lucifer and House of Whispers at Vertigo, Deep Root at Vault Comics, and more. All right, and getting right into it, we're all here to get the scoop on your latest projects, and I'd love to hear what you've got in the works for our audience today. We'll go ahead and start with Kyle and then move clockwise, please.
So first up is, I guess, Radiant Black. We're literally recording this after the morning after issue 4 came out. And so the reaction has been very fun with regards to the person that is now the title character of the book. I guess I'll put it that way in case you haven't read it. Or should we have spoilers? Should we not have spoilers, Chloe? What do you think?
I think keeping a little mystery is good, but I also don't want to censor you. So keep in mind that this is for people who will be buying your books for the benefit of readers.
So I guess what I would say about the book, and I'll keep it as short as can be here, because I want to talk about Tony's sweater that I am in love with. Oh my gosh, you got up and put that on this morning. Like, that is amazing. I'm in a t-shirt.
I Zoom sweater.
I got to level up, man. But speaking of leveling up, so I did Power Rangers for a few years, and from 2015 or 2016 until Shattered Grid, which was a big summer event. I did about 3 years on that book. I built it creatively from the beginning. And through that experience, I met some really amazing people, one of whom is Michael Basudel. The other is Matt Groom. Matt writes Ultraman with me now at Marvel, and Michael is my editor and designer on Radiant Black. So going from Power Rangers to then Ultraman to now Radiant Black was a really natural progression for me. This is it's an original superhero series that definitely has aesthetic influences that are kind of in line with Japanese tokusatsu, things like Ultraman and Super Sentai, which Power Rangers is an adaptation from, a loose adaptation from at times. At the heart of this book, though, is kind of a millennial reinvention of the Peter Parker kind of everyman archetype. But this is someone who's older. This is a main character named Nathan Burnett, who's 30 years old. And the first page of issue 1 is the most existentially terrifying image I have ever written. There's no haunted houses yet, but it's a phone screen with his bank account balance, and it's $46 in a checking account and $38,000 of credit card debt. And there's a word balloon coming off this phone that says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Burnett, but unfortunately your loan application has been denied." So he's working in LA, basically trying to make it as a crime novelist to live out his dream to become the next Raymond Chandler, and stuff has not worked out. So by page 4, he's moving back in with his parents in Lockport, Illinois. And that's before he finds the miniature black hole that turns him into potentially some sort of cosmic warrior. We've had a lot of fun on the book thus far. You know, each issue has been kind of wildly different. Issue 3 is is one of the things I'm the most proud of that I've ever written. It's about a day in the life of Nathan as a writer, trying to write his novel. And I think we played with the form in a pretty bold way, including excerpts from the writing process, the ongoing narrative in his head that we probably all relate to here. And then on top of that, actually some prose. I actually wrote a big short story as Nathan that we watch him try to adapt the whole issue. So for any sort of, I guess, particularly speaking to the ALA, I think there's a really interesting kind of unique angle there, especially for anyone who may not be reading comics or is looking for a new comic to even just kind of get their feet wet. There's some crossover there with both being incredibly contemporary superheroes, but also it's about the writing process in so many other ways.
I think that will be a really interesting way to talk about it with readers. Also, so many people so many library patrons love comics, not just as something to read, but something to participate in. They oftentimes really want to write their own comics or write their own fiction. So that's a question that librarians get a lot.
Well, I'm really glad I thought of that just now.
Good job. Nice working on your feet.
All that coffee this morning.
And Dan, can you tell us a little bit about Homesick Pilots?
Sure. So Homesick Pilots is a sort of horror, sort of adventure-y kind of book. It's set in 1994, in which a haunted house. All the haunted houses that aren't in Kyle's book are in my book.
We have to talk about that.
So, it's about a haunted house that gets up and walks basically through California. With the lead singer of a high school punk band inside it. And then the story is how we sort of got there, at least the first volume, which has just come out. So it's kind of in a similar space to sort of things like Stranger Things, or there's definitely like a lot of sort of like Haunting of Hill House and stuff in there, but then with a very sort of manga-esque superhero kind of angle as well, where this teenage punk ends up connected to this haunted house and is searching to find its ghosts, which have all been stolen by sort of squatters and things over the years. And each of them have different powers and there's different abilities, and it's all about how she's able to bring them back to this house.
I love that. You did forget to mention that there is, like, with that superhero, there is a connection, I think, with what Kyle was talking about, his work with the tokusatsu. Like, there are a few moments in the first volume of Homesick Pilots where you get a super, like, Godzilla versus Kong feel, or a Pacific.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, there's the big fist fight with the haunted house at the end of the book.
Yeah,
Maybe I should have left.
Dan, I have a giant robot. I only agreed to do this today so I could be pitching you a crossover. Like,
that's absolutely good.
You own the giant robot?
I own the giant. Yeah, it's Image, baby. We own everything.
Oh, I thought you like. I was like, damn, Radiant Black is doing great. How about a giant robot?
Bought an orchestra. Bought a giant robot. You know. It's battery
really
powered. It's friendly, you know. But yeah.
I'm hoping to buy a haunted house next.
Huh?
I'm hoping to buy a haunted house next.
Yeah, you won't regret it at all.
Please do that. Yeah.
I hope your book's ahead of schedule, because when you buy a haunted house, your production, Deanna may just not hear from you forever after that.
Alternatively, though, the haunted typewriter that comes with the house may start sending out manuscripts that you did not approve, but they will be ahead of schedule.
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah. And Tony, can you give us a little bit of background about Stray Dogs?
Yeah. I write a book called Stray Dogs. The pitch is weird, but it's very accessible, and it's easy. There's a serial killer who takes his victim dogs as trophies, and we tell the story from the perspective of the dogs. So it's like a 90s animated dog movie, like a Balto, or like a
All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah, like like an All Dogs Go to Heaven, but with the serial killer. And so it sort of plays on that nostalgia, but it also is terrifying. because dogs, can't do anything to fight a serial killer. They're just dogs, they don't remember what's going on, so they're confused and they're in danger. So it's like Lady and the Tramp meets Silence of the Lambs is sort of the way we initially pitched it, and it's people seem to really dig it. I dig it, and so yeah.
When Tony told me the idea at a New York Comic Con a few years ago, and I think I literally looked at you and said, "That's the greatest idea I've ever heard to make this book."
It was very encouraging. I was like, "Oh, geez, I should make this."
And can I tell the story of it getting greenlit?
Yeah.
So I was gonna so Tony and I have known each other for years, and so he put this he put the first issue together, and the artist, is it Trish?
Yeah, Trish Forstner.
So Trish Forstner has a connection to Don Bluth, if I'm not mistaken, as far as training and as she was coming up, right?
Yeah, she took an online seminar, like a course from Don Bluth.
So Don Bluth, of those 80s and 90s animation, All Dogs Go to Heaven and Brave Little Toaster, is Fievel? Is Fievel Don Bluth as well?
He did Fievel. Yeah. He didn't do Brave Little Toaster, but he did.
Oh, he didn't? Okay. Did he do Secret of Nim?
Definitely did Secret of Nim.
So you think about some of that stuff that we all kind of grew up on, where it's like it's got wonder and so much heart and charm, but like this darkness to it as well that is pretty scary. And so this, I'm looking at this art, it's incredible. And Tony and I like would talk about it like from time to time. And so I told him, I was like, I want to show this to Eric Stevenson. And I was with him at San Diego with Dan Panosian. And I went to open my phone to show Dan something else, and your PDF was open. And Dan goes, "Oh, what's that?" Because he saw Trish's art immediately. Everyone who sees Trish's art is like, "Whoa, what is this here?" And I was like, "Oh, well." And I looked at Eric and I said, "I was actually going to bring this up to you." And I walked him through the concept, and I got to the part where the dog, it's like, and then she realizes that this whole place and all, like her person was killed by the new master, and she doesn't remember and everything. And Eric goes, "And every dog here is a trophy?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Greenlit."
That's how we found out Eric Stevenson was secretly a serial killer.
No. No, he just likes good ideas too.
He does. He likes great ideas. He knows it when he sees it. Yeah, for sure.
It was much easier than I'd prepared myself for. Like I was really ready to pitch that thing hard. And Kyle just texted me and he was like, "You're good to go." So
it's not always that easy, but it's so wonderful when it is. And when you get somebody who has the vision to look at the project that you're brainstorming and say, "I know that when you complete this is going to be something amazing." So all of your books do have a cinematic quality to them, like talking about Don Bluth and talking about Stranger Things and Tokusatsu and that sort of Super Saiyan tradition in anime and manga. But comics don't really have some of the benefits that films do. They don't have things like a score. You can't zoom in on something with your audience and take them on this journey of an eye line in the same way. So working with comics, where often you get these, you get gutters, you get breaks between the panels, you can't telegraph things to your audience in the same way. What techniques do you use as creators to achieve some of the same emotional impact to make these books feel so much like a film, which they do?
Well, you have the page turn, which I think is like when you're doing a suspense thing is sort of your biggest gun that you can pull out, that's where you can hit people the hardest. Because basically every 2 pages, you got a chance to drop a surprise on somebody, and every 2 pages at the end of the page before, you can ask a question. And when you turn the page, you can either answer that question or you can completely surprise them, which is something that comics have that movies and TV don't have. But you can sort of use it to get that same sort of rhythm going or to break the rhythm. Yeah, I love that. And working in suspense and horror is it's perfect for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people complain like that it's hard to do scares and suspense in comics because you don't have all that, like all the movie or TV stuff. But I found it to be, it's not easy, but it's just like when you know what you're working with and you sort of plan for it like that, it pays off really well.
I'd say even like particularly on that horror front, it pushes you to do often something more interesting, because you can never do the sort of like the cheap jump scare doesn't exist in comics, because you don't have the sound to suddenly just like, you don't have that sort of sense of like bursting a balloon behind someone and making them jump physically. So you have to like really build to it. You have to really make sure that dread like comes through. So you have to make the reader afraid to turn the page themselves. And I think that's when you can like land that is, that sings more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am very, very obsessive about my page turns and where those reveals are, and what you're doing with them, especially because you only have, as Tony says, it's every other page. So you don't have, your eye will always leak over and see the right hand page, and you'll kind of, it's not a true, twist or surprise. Which always is infuriating when you're doing a book that has advertisements. And you guys, I mean, everybody's laughing right now because we've all been through this, like where you have, and they slot ads, and then in certain work for hire books sometimes, and it's like, oh man, it just broke up the page turn, and now it's like everything's off now. But I've been making movies since I was a kid. Like that's something I love. And it's like a big part of my life. And so I think about that a lot. And I remember when I first started in comics, an editor told me, they're like, yeah, but remember, like comics aren't movies. And I was like, yeah, no, I know that, but it took me a couple years to really understand like the nuances of that sentence. There are things that we can do in comics that we can't do in cinema. Sound, for example, like I was a sound editor for many years. And so I have this kind of like fascination with playing with sound effects and also doing sound-based gags. Like I did this, my Batman Beyond run, the whole first issue takes place, like a year later after what you had seen in like the Return of the Joker movie. And now Terry's in college and he and Dana have broken up, and all these things are different. And what you realize is like the whole issue, the voice in his earpiece that you assume is Bruce Wayne, because that's what the show did for 3 years. The twist at the end is that it's actually been Dick Grayson. But because there's no performance, there's no actor, you can pull that gag off only in a comic book because you're playing off of someone's preconceived notion. So stuff like that, I'm really, really kind of all about, and really just taking full advantage of the medium that, you're working in. I do tend to like page wide panels though, and Marcelo and I really like those. So for Radiant Black, that does tend to give kind of a widescreen kind of the perception of a widescreen scope, particularly for action. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one that we lean on.
Yeah,
I would say like also just going on from the words on the page thing. I think that's also like one of the big, like one of the things that films don't have that comics have. It's words on a page. It is in its essence, it is fundamentals. It's still a book, and speaking only for myself, like I love books and words on pages, and so being able to sort of do things like narration and the sort of voiceover stuff, which might feel cheesy in film or pull you out. You can totally do that in a book. You can get that real sense in a comic still of like, let me tell you a story, and you are going on a journey with a narrator and all those kind of things.
And people retain stuff better when they read it and they watched it or listened to it. So like you can do stuff like repeat stuff, or you can count on the reader remembering something because you wrote it down, whereas like in a movie sometimes, or in TV, you have to really hit something if it's going to be important. And you still do that in comics, but you have a little bit more of the benefit of that person having read that and internalized it and holding the book. They can flip back to it, like it's sort of nice to be able to repeat beats or hide little things and then have that come up later, knowing that maybe somebody will go like, oh shit,
And there's also a really interesting kind of reverse effect that comics have from like I'm just thinking of this, Tony. I feel like you're like the perfect person to weigh in on this as an artist as well. Like in a film, the more cuts you have, the quicker the pace can. That's the cliche anyway. It's like, oh, it's really cutty. There are a lot of really quick cuts in this action. In a comic, if you do that, it actually slows the pace down. It's the reverse effect because your eye has to look at each, especially if there's sound effects as well. Like in an action scene, for example, like you're actually slowing down the pace by having all of these inset panels and all these cuts. If you want something to read faster, the fastest read is a splash page or a double page spread.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Tony, have you played around with that over the years as far as like
it's interesting
controlling the flow?
It's super different. Like it does make you move faster, but all the cuts feel like a bigger, more impactful thing. Where if it's TV or something and there's just like a quick, like somebody moves like that, if you do that in the full page, that's important, So it's definitely interesting and something that like that takes figuring out. I feel like the inset panels work well for like suspense, like definitely like you're saying, like it takes longer. It's not cutty in a fast way. It's cutty in like a long, here's this, where you would have glossed over the whole page. You had to slow down and focus on each panel, and it sort of lets you build little small moments. And then you get to do your reveals.
And how obsessive are you guys? How like particular are you guys about your role in the process when you're creating these books? Like when you're figuring something out and you've plotted it and you're working with your collaborators, whether you're writing or doing art or, no matter what stage you are in the process, how much do you control that? Like, are you giving somebody a page with a script that says, well, Mark walks into a room and he looks upset and there's a bird in the window? Or do you take like a very Alan Moore approach to it and you outline what every single panel is doing and how many raindrops there are in the window and what angle that rain is coming down at, et cetera? Like how hard do you hold on to the steering wheel when you're working with collaborators and you want to get a particular effect out on the page?
Definitely depends who you're working with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Homesick Pilots. So the artist on Homesick Pilots is Casper Wingard, and we actually did our first professional comic book. We did it together, and that was also an Image. That was Limbo back in started in 2015, and Trade came out in 2016. But we've been working together pretty much since then. So when you have a relationship like that, you really kind of like understand each other. You don't need to do like any sort of overly prescriptive or you never want to sort of like straitjacket your artist so that they aren't contributing and they aren't, they don't feel able to like bring stuff to the table. That would be the worst situation, I think.
Yeah, I look at it two different ways. The first kind of component of it is as you're asking, Chloe, about just the writing process. And to echo Dan, like it really depends on who I'm working with. The more I work with an artist, the looser I get. And predominantly it's because I learned many years ago that I was working with an artist with Eddie Barrows on Nightwing. He was amazing. But like when I loosened up, the page layouts became more dynamic. And then it was like, oh, well, great. I can work with that. Like I'll rewrite dialogue. Like I'll do an entirely new pass if I need to, like whatever's going to best showcase, get the best, most interesting, most dynamic art, then we can, kind of go from there. But like, and with someone like Marcelo on Radiant Black, like I tend to do all my books, like we basically run everything through GChat. So we have these threads, like I have 2 different Radiant Black threads right now for reasons. And so we're just in constant communication, all of us. And so it really is this kind of organic, it's kind of like writing a song with a band, like all in the room together. Like we are riffing off each other kind of in real time. And when you have the right collaborators, it's a really exciting thing to do. And like Dan, you have that spread in issue 1 of the house and going from opposite directions. And I read it on an iPad in single image mode, and I was ridiculously confused. But once I saw it as a spread, I was like, oh, well, that's amazing. And I would be willing to bet there was some back and forth on that with Casper. Like, that's not something that like you can script in an Alan, like scripting it like Alan Moore down to like the detail of the gutter size would crush the soul of what's interesting there. I'd actually love to hear if we have a second. And no one cares about Tony. You saw the spread, Tony. It was great. Like,
Incredible.
Poor Tony.
was it a back and forth, Dan?
Yeah, I definitely remember the first line of that page. You get to that page in the script. The first line is "Don't kill me," but
yeah,
and then sort of went from there. Yeah, I think I drew that in my sort of MS Paint kind of way, where I was just like, "We're gonna go into the house this way, and this is this room, and we're gonna go this way," and then Casper called me up and went, "Yeah, that doesn't work, but let's do this." And it's like, "Yeah, okay, let's just do that."
I did not know. I did not know there was going to be an MS Paint reference at 9:30 a.m.
Oh yeah.
on a Friday, but I'm
really looking forward to the deluxe hardcover to come out so that we can see that MS Paint and more.
Yeah, MS Paint. Yeah. No, I've definitely got it.
So unfortunately, we are running out of time. We have about 4 minutes. I wanted to give Tony the chance to answer if you had anything that you wanted to contribute to the.
No, ours is very collaborative too, but because I draw and write, I don't draw this book, but I do thumbnails for the whole book, and the artist and I are very collaborative, and we work on Dropbox. So when Trish will save a file, it'll just update on my computer, and so I'll see like, oh, she penciled page 13, and then I can see like what the little dogs are looking like, and she sticks real close to the thumbnails. We have a layout artist too who does a lot of background work as well. So it's sort of like a real involved collaborative production the whole time. But I think I'm a pain in the ass. I hear people that have done more comics than me, and they go like, well, it's just, like you gotta let them be free, and that's when the best stuff comes out. I'm just like, okay. It sounds cool, but I'm just not I'm not able yet to give up the stranglehold I have on the thumbnails, I guess. My friend Phil Hester used to thumbnail all his stuff, and then he also has said like, you gotta stop doing that eventually, it's better this way. But I'm stuck, I'm so used to, like, I see a page visually when I write it, so I have to also go like, this is what I mean.
Well, everyone has a different process, but I'm sure you'll get there. Your fingers.
I mean, I think this one came out great, so I'm not ready to change right away. Like, I think.
Well, I am so grateful to you guys for being here. I really could keep talking for hours and hours, and I'm sure our audience would love that too, to keep chatting with you guys. But unfortunately, we do have to say goodbye. I wanted to give you a chance to let everybody know where they can find you online. So if there are any channels people can follow you and follow your work at, and we'll start with Tony and then go counterclockwise again, please.
Yeah, I'm Tony Fleecs, Fleecs, on Twitter and Instagram. And we have a website, straydogscomic.com, that has a mailing list on it. That's probably the best place to go if you want to be in the loop on Stray Dogs information. And our trade comes out in September. So
awesome. Thank you. And Dan?
Yeah, I'm at Dan PG Waters on both Twitter and Instagram, but realistically, I'm far more on Twitter. And I have a newsletter, which is Kind of the Point, which comes out in theory every 2 weeks, but I've been busy. And you can find that, probably the easiest way to find that is through my Twitter as well.
Thank you very much. And Kyle?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but echoing Dan, I'm way more active on Twitter. Kyle D. Higgins. We have a Twitter account for Radiant Black. It's just at Radiant BLK. And there's like some pretty wild, like, in-universe stuff that we do on social media. So if you do like the book or are interested, like, definitely give a follow to the Radiant Black account, because there's some even crazier stuff coming up that's very kind of like an ARG. And then, I don't know, I'm not involved in it. So, and then we have a website that's called, it's radiant.black is the website. And through that, like you can find listings for the book for individual issues you can buy through different retailers, different comic stores. And I have a newsletter as well that I should be putting out way more frequently. It's tied to my company. It's Kyle Higgins, Black Market News. So my company is Black Market Narrative. And so you can sign up for that newsletter either through Twitter or radiant.black/newsletter. Pretty much everything, you can find everything through the radiant.black website.
Thank you. Thank you guys again. And thanks to our audience for visiting us here. Make sure that you check out the Image Comics booth where you can chat further with our creators and even more creators, so many creators. So yeah, come check our schedule and you can talk directly one-on-one with these guys. We look forward to seeing you and thanks again. Bye-bye.